Main events get remembered. Champions get photographed. But every wrestling territory, especially Portland, was built on something just as important. The wrestlers who opened the show, anchored the middle, and made the stars look like stars. They didn't always leave with the belt, but without them, there is no main event. This is the Mid-Card Chronicle, featuring the dependable talents who made every card complete. When Alex Smirnoff arrived in Portland on September 14, 1985, he wasn't a rookie looking for his break. He was a 17-year veteran who had already seen the peak years of his career. But what Portland needed in late 1985 wasn't youth. It needed size, it needed presence, it needed a believable hill. Smirnoff still had the body. He still had the look. And early on, it appeared the territory might build something around him. He opened with wins over Scott Dorian and Steve Pardee. The direction seemed clear. A program with Ricky Vaughn was on the horizon. Then things shifted. Billy Jack Haynes returned to Portland for several appearances and accused Smirnoff of being a spy for the WWF. An interesting storyline at the time when Vince McMahon's expansion was reshaping the wrestling landscape. The angle had heat. The confrontation felt like it could go somewhere. Instead, Smirnoff was gone. And 2 nights later, he was working West Coast shots for the WWF. In hindsight, his Portland stay seems like what could have been. A big body, a seasoned hand, a heel that might have stabilized part of the card during a transitional period. Instead, he became a footnote. But even footnotes tell you something about that moment in time. Some wrestlers you remember for titles, others you remember for moments. Mike Rodgers' favorite memory of Dean Higuchi didn't happen in the ring. It happened at the Dean Silverstone reunion. Over 75 wrestlers gathered over 2 days. As Higuchi walked in the room, Ed Wiskowski couldn't resist. "It's Mr. Fuji. Fuji is here." Without a break, Dean shouted back, "I am not Fuji." He enjoyed the rib. That was Dean Higuchi. Over the years, Mike Rodgers and Dean exchanged letters. Mike would send him the Ring Around the Northwest Bulletin, and he always told him how much he appreciated hearing about old friends. Mike asked him questions from time to time, but something always told him not to push for a formal interview. Dean Higuchi was private, and he had earned that right. Before wrestling, Higuchi was a serious bodybuilder. In 1958, he placed 6th in the Mr. America competition. He had opened a gym in 1957, a gym that was used by many wrestlers. In fact, Dick the Destroyer Buyer credited Higuchi as part of his training foundation. Dean debuted in Portland in 1962 and received an immediate push. Higuchi won the Northwest Tag Titles in 1967 with Johnny Costas. Eventually, much of his career centered in Vancouver, where he captured the tag titles 8 times between 1969 and 1983. Nationally, he reached even greater heights, holding the WWWF tag titles with Tony Garea and capturing the United States title in San Francisco multiple times. Interestingly, Dean used 3 different names in Portland, starting under his given name. Around 1970, he became Dean Kalani, explaining on television that he wanted to honor his mother's maiden name. Later, he wrestled as Dean Ho, a nod to entertainer Dean Ho in Hawaii. And then there's the Georgia story. While working with John Foley, Dean, who had a notoriously weak stomach, was being choked on the mat, settling the hold with his mouth open and tongue out. Foley bent down and unexpectedly French kissed him. Dean crawled on his fingertips and toes like a cartoon character to the ring apron and promptly threw up. Even in wrestling, some surprises are too much. Dean wrestled through 1983, then retired to Vancouver, where he ran a gym, operated a deli, and did social work. And he passed away in 2021. For all the titles and all the names, Dean Higuchi is remembered most as a steady presence and a genuinely kind man. Professor Dale Lewis was legitimate. Before professional wrestling, he represented the United States in the 1960 Olympics and won the 1959 Pan American Games. When he debuted in Oregon on August 1st, 1974, he wasn't just another newcomer. He arrived with real credentials, and he backed them up, quickly scoring wins over Jim Gagne, Tito Montez, Al Madrigal, and Rick Ronaldo. But it wasn't just his amateur background that defined him in Portland. It was the professor. Dutch Savage once said of Lewis, "You let him do his intellectual interviews, and he hardly ever raised his voice. It was excruciatingly good." That quiet intensity made him different. He didn't scream. He lectured. Shortly after Lewis's arrival, Olympic standout Chris Taylor came into the territory, a traveling attraction like Andre the Giant. The idea of two Olympians sharing the ring in Portland was compelling, even if fleeting. In 1974, Lewis defeated Jimmy Snuka for the Northwest title, and his feud with Dutch Savage produced one of Portland's most memorable angles. In the Crow's Nest interview area, Lewis attacked Savage and drove his head into the chicken wire fencing. Savage staggered, covering his face, screaming, "I can't see!" as blood streamed between his fingers. The following week on television, Savage explained that a piece of wire had been sticking out and had nearly entered his eye socket. He claimed he was lucky it hadn't caught him his vision. It was gritty. It felt real. Savage also noted that Lewis was the first wrestler he ever saw who could stop Don Leo Jonathan using an amateur technique. Lewis left at the end of 1974, but returned to the Northwest mid-1975, particularly in Vancouver, where he won the tag titles 4 times with Gene Kaninsky and Masa Saito, and twice with Siegfried Stanke. He homesteaded in Portland and worked preliminaries through 1976 and 77, and then part-time until 1980. In the WWF, he had a fictional brother, Gene Lewis, better known as Cousin Luke. After wrestling, Dale managed an RV dealership and passed away in 1997 from leukemia. Professor Dale Lewis may not be remembered first when discussing Portland champions, but when you needed someone credible, someone who could wrestle, talk, and elevate a feud, he was the man. Not every wrestler becomes the face of a territory. But every territory survives because of the ones who show up night after night and make the card work. The steady hands, the character builders, the glue that held it together. This has been the Mid-Card Chronicle, because without the middle, there is no main event. This series is based on the Encyclopedia of Portland Wrestlers by historian Mike Rodgers, available now on Amazon, and new episodes drop every Friday. Be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. I'm your host, Frank Culbertson, and thanks for joining us here on the Mid-Card Chronicle.